Hi, it's Amanda DeVito Parle. Welcome to my podcast, At the Kitchen Table, where we will guide, inspire, and connect. I'm interviewing Jeremy McCallum today. Jeremy's a longtime friend and a work colleague. He works in the same building that I've worked in for many years. He and I are raising kids of similar age, and we are just like-minded in our entrepreneurial spirit. And the reason I wanted to interview Jeremy was twofold. One, because I think you're an interesting guy, and I think you and I have interesting conversation. The other reason I wanted to interview is that the insurance space, which circles the real estate space, has been ever changing. And I just thought this was an opportune time to spend a little bit of time just exploring your business, how you got into insurance, what's changing or shifting in your industry, and then maybe some predictions for the future of insurance and, all of that. So that's how I'd like to spend our day together today. Okay, I'd like to welcome Jeremy McCallum.
Hey, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. So why insurance? How'd you get here? How did you come into this business, and what was the appeal? What was the draw into insurance, or how did you land in this business?
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever plans to get into insurance. I was a golf professional, and while I was in college, high school first and then college, and I kept getting recruited every winter by an insurance agent that was one of our members, and I sort of started to realize through time that he was playing more golf than I was, and it was a passion of mine. So I just, one winter right after graduation from school, I decided that I would give it a shot, and all of a sudden 25 years went by in a blink of an eye.
Yeah. What did he say to you that drew you into the industry? What was it that, besides the fact that you saw him living sort of this interesting leisurely life where you were like, that looks pretty good, ultimately, what was the real appeal in?
Probably two things. One was that everybody is buying home and auto insurance, and secondly, that it was a residual income in nature.
Yeah.
Therefore, if you can have a lifetime value of a client, you'll continue to make commissions off of that on into the future.
Yeah, it's always one of the things I'd admired about insurance was just, it seemed to me that there was just this more consistent income in the business in terms of if you could build a nice portfolio of business and then keep the clients happy, that you could keep selling them new policies or renewing them and hit this residual stride.
Yes, correct.
What is that? So help me understand the big picture of insurance, because this is something I've been sort of confused about, and maybe you can help me understand it. So there's insurance brokers, and then there's insurance brokerage firms, but then I've heard that there's these big insurance companies, the big insurance companies, the ones that insure the insurers. Help me understand the hierarchy of insurance.
Yeah. So on the storefront level or the retail level, you have captive insurance agencies. That would be State Farm, Farmers, Allstate, American Family, companies like that. And then you also have independent agents or brokers that represent a whole variety of other carriers. So that could be Travelers, Safeco, Nationwide, Hartford. There's several. And one of the advantages I've found on being on the independent side is it gives you more flexibility to be able to move your customers from one carrier to another as their needs change and or rates aren't maybe stable with some carriers through time. It usually levels out. And then above that, you have the carrier level. And then the large mega brokers that you're talking about are the reinsurance companies of the world. There's, I believe, only 4 of those, the German Re, Swiss Re, Zurich, and Lloyd's of London. And basically what happens is the insurance carriers all buy reinsurance from one of those companies, and those treaties renew every year, so they have to kind of get some pricing and basically pay for insurance to then turn around and insure people.
Who funds the reinsurance pools? How are those pools funded? Whose money is all that at the top?
It's a lot of private equity money, and a lot of those companies, they've been around for years, some of them centuries. Since the beginning of insurance.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's what I always I knew that there was this reinsurance or this umbrella over the insurance industry, essentially in catastrophic events. Mm-hmm. That's
most
when
of the
those
time,
kick in.
Yeah, most of the time the carriers are paying about 20% of a loss in a large loss situation. So if a house were to burn to the ground, ultimately about 80% of that money would typically come from the reinsurance marketplaces.
So the current insurance climate is changing. What do you see happening in insurance right now? And then I want to talk about how does that affect just the day-to-day consumer? How are consumers having to adjust in some of the changes that the insurance agent world is seeing? And what on high has come down that is now changing your business?
In Colorado specifically, it's been weather patterns. So large amounts of hail have made it it's the 49th most profitable state in the nation for insurance from a carrier standpoint.
Meaning the carriers are profitable
Correct.
most profitable here, second only to?
I believe it's Florida and Texas.
Okay.
California is kind of back and forth with us as well. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a pretty unprofitable endeavor for the carriers in the state of Colorado.
Wow.
And it's primarily driven by hail and also some wildfires that we've seen in most recent years.
So how is the business changing right now?
We've seen about a 53% rate increase over the last 3 years in the state of Colorado on the homeowner side. And I don't know that that's going to slow down. We could see as much as 20 or 30% in the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, that just hammers people's ability to afford insurance.
Yes. With taxes on the rise and insurance on the rise, it's making homeownership a little bit difficult.
So, but you're seeing that across all insurance types, auto.
We are not as drastic on the auto side. They're able to kind of control those loss. We are seeing some litigation stuff come in to where auto rates are on the rise as well. But I think a lot of the auto rate that you're seeing is to help subsidize what they're losing on the property side.
Sure. Right. They're raising auto insurance right now because hazard insurance on the house. What's the difference between like homeowners insurance, hazard insurance, like renters insurance? What are the different kinds of insurance that people can buy, and what's the real difference?
Yep. Hazard insurance is actually homeowners insurance. The mortgage industry calls it hazard insurance, but there is a dwelling fire policy for your investment properties. There's a condo policy, which is known as an HO6 policy for condos that you own, even if they're rented out. And then there's a HO4 policy for renters.
HO4 would be like if you were a renter, you were just insuring your stuff.
Correct. And your liability.
Okay. HO6 would be like you're insuring in a condo your stuff and the inside walls.
Typically drywall in, but it's different depending on the HOA, but that's what we most often see is drywall in.
Okay.
Including your contents and your liability.
And then when you own your own house, like a single family, you're insuring the entire dwelling.
Correct. HO3, and that's going to insure the structure, your contents, and liability as well.
So how are the consumers reacting to this change, and how is it affecting people, and how are you seeing people either shift how much insurance they're carrying, how they're structuring their policies? Are you seeing real shifts, or do you have even a suggestion for what people should be doing to keep themselves covered and to timely reshop their coverage and things like that?
Yeah, it's twofold. If you're with an independent agent, they can kind of shop for you. Otherwise, if you're with a captive agent that I'd mentioned earlier, you may want to shop with an independent agent because there's more variety and option. But we're seeing anything from carriers taking on larger deductibles, be it a percentage of coverage, as opposed to your standard, the days of the past of having $1,000 deductible are kind of going away. So we're seeing higher deductibles, we're seeing more shopping, but the challenge in the marketplace is we're also seeing carriers not want to write business as much. So we have, some large carriers that have come to us and basically said, we need to control how much you're writing and put some quotas on us and or shut down business writing of property insurance in Colorado altogether. It's made it very difficult for us to shop in some instances. We've had to open up to some new markets and try to find different varieties of options for folks.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you see people in the past who've kind of are chronic claims filers. And what has happened to those people who have a lot of claims, and or what's the right behavior for a consumer, I guess, to say?
Yeah, you really want to handle the smaller stuff, the maintenance stuff yourself, and not file claims, because generally speaking, it's the severity of the claims, but also the frequency that can cause you some challenges. And with especially the homeowners market, and as tough a place as it is right now for insurance, you really want to reserve that for the large loss. The hailstorm where you need a new roof, or the fire that burns part of your house down or all of it. You really want to avoid that maintenance type of a claim. And
so then really the insurance industry is moving more towards like bigger problems. This is like catastrophic. You're looking for like flood, fire, and big problems. So essentially it makes sense that you would raise your deductible, sort of self-insure the smaller stuff, and then get a higher deductible, thereby lowering your yearly premium, right?
Yes.
Do you think that's the way of the future for real estate? Is that where this is going?
I do. I'm seeing where deductibles are definitely going to be on the rise. I think even the mortgage industry is probably getting more flexible with being able for homeowners to have higher deductibles. In the past, they would limit to, say, a $5,000 deductible, but in the state of Colorado, that's not a very big reality anymore. You're seeing more like 1% and 2%, and what that means is it's 1 or 2% of the coverage amount that you have the house insured for. So in some instances, on $1 million home, you're looking at 1% of that, or 2, depending. So you're looking at a $10,000 or $20,000 deductible. If you need a new roof, you're likely helping self-insure that roof.
So we saw a ton of people who were underinsured during the Marshall Fire. Marshall Fire burned 1,000 residential properties in Colorado due to wildfire, basically I think it's still, the jury's still out on whether that was human caused or accidentally caused, but in either case, a lot of residential properties burned down. And a lot of people were underinsured. What did that look like for the people that you saw? I know that you had several people who lost properties. Most of those people you were able to take care of. In fact, one of your clients, I know as a fact, was able to rebuild quickly. She was insured well. But there were a lot of people who were underinsured with other carriers. There were a lot of people who got caught. I don't understand. Help me understand how to avoid that. If I were a regular client and I had a piece of property and I wasn't really paying attention to insurance, what would you have told those people to do differently now? What should we do?
Well, you want to obviously make sure that you have enough coverage on the property itself, but you also want to be able to have an endorsement on your policy for increased replacement cost. The ones that you mentioned, we did have 2 total losses, but they had 150% replacement cost on their policy. So whatever they had their home insured for, they had an additional 50% beyond that. There are carriers and agents out there that don't endorse the policy to include that coverage, and that's where a lot of folks got caught. But the other thing too is you got to remember that was a perfect storm. We were right in the middle of COVID. Inflation was on the rise. Homes were probably underinsured to begin with because of the cost of materials and labor at that time. The
market had gone crazy in the subsequent years just before that. So then all of a sudden you had property values that had significantly increased, kind of caught people off guard, right?
Yep. Yeah. So the standard companies, most insurance agents or carriers are going to put a 3% inflation guard on your home. So it's going to increase by 3% how much you have covered per year. Mm-hmm. That just wasn't enough in that time frame.
Yeah. But I see a lot of people looking away from their insurance. They're not looking at it every year. They're not calling. Maybe they have an insurance agent, a State Farm agent or somebody like that, but they're not. Those agents aren't proactively coming to them and saying, let's look at your renewal and let's reshop it. This is why I like doing business with you as a broker, because you'll come to me and say, hey, it's time to relook at this rate because I may be able to do this policy with somebody else for a better deal for you or whatever. But why do people kind of they get caught, right? They get caught not updating their insurance. And what's your advice on that?
I think it should be reviewed every couple of years, whether you're in a position to switch carriers or not. At least kind of review it with your agent, ask the questions, hey, do I have the coverage I need? Some people will do an addition on a home and not notify their agent. There's all sorts of things that could happen that as life changes that you're going to have your needs for insurance or will change alongside of that. But I would say a review at least every couple of years makes a lot of sense.
What else is changing in the greater insurance space? I know the industry's changing, but I don't exactly know what earth is moving under your feet. What other earth is sort of moving under your feet? As
I mentioned earlier, they're dealing a lot with fire and mitigation of fire. So you're starting to see now homes in, say, the evergreen conifer marketplaces. If somebody wants to buy a home up there, they're probably going to have to do a bunch of mitigation, which could mean knocking down trees, cutting back branches. You're starting to see carriers want to put wildfire exclusions on the policy, which is probably not going to qualify it for a loan. So there's all sorts of stuff in the mechanics that are in the works. The state of Colorado's working on a FAIR plan. I don't think they've written anything yet. It did pass into law in 2023. Here we are 2024, and I don't believe there's been a policy written yet. I would figure that's probably going to be Q1 of next year, but it's not perfect. It's limited to $750,000 in coverage A. So I think what we may see in the future is a stacking of limits. You may have a situation in wildfire-prone areas where somebody may be forced to a state plan or something similar to our FAIR plan, and then have to buy coverage beyond that $750 coverage that'll go to from a different carrier. So it could be a stacking of limits. I think that's starting to be positioned out there now. It's pretty new to the industry. But
so if I can switch gears just on you a little bit here, you're running a business, you run a team. And just tell me a little bit about the group you've set up and the business you've structured and some of the pros and cons of that. And how's that worked out for you?
It's worked out very well. I've had a team of 9 folks that have been with me for over 135 combined years.
Wow.
And I've been fortunate along the way to get to know them as people, and they've done a great job. But yeah, I have agents that just basically sell home and auto insurance, primarily a little bit of commercial. And then I have a service team as well that services the ongoing book of business. And we have a very seasoned book of business that has been with us for, several clients over 20 years, and just fortunate to have a team that works well together.
Yeah, I mean, I can say just in admiration of the business you've built, a very steady crew. You've got just really loyal employees, people that have been with the company a long time. What do you think it is that you're doing that has sort of built that loyalty? How do you feel like you came to a place of such a stable group in your business?
Probably just focus and vision, and also being present. I see so many of my colleagues out there that aren't maybe at the office
You're
every
playing
day.
too much golf, aren't they?
Yeah, some of them. I do try to do some of that too, but you have to be there. You have to, be part of the company that you're working in. And I tell the people all the time, I work with them, they don't work for me, but we work together.
Yeah.
And it's just a team atmosphere.
Best piece of advice for an entrepreneur, maybe, the thing that worked out the best for you?
Just having a clear vision and being able to chase it. It helps if you can lead people. I didn't know that I was a leader necessarily right away, but I quickly learned that if I did the things that I needed to do and provided what they needed, that they would follow.
Yeah.
And kind of believe in the same vision.
Yeah. So recently you sort of merged or did an acquisition with a larger national brand.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Our marketplace, Evertree Insurance Services, our marketplace here in Colorado has gotten pretty difficult, and joining them gave us some flexibility to bring on some new companies, new carriers, have some better technology, and just overall hopefully be able to grow on into the future as well.
Yeah. There's a spot in every industry for different kinds of insurance companies, but I'm curious, a lot of people say to me, like, why shouldn't I just stay with State Farm? And I know it's because they're selling their own product, but I guess I don't totally understand where they get product from and where, like, you get product from, and how that's different, how that all sort of, if it all flows up. I'm curious just about the real difference there.
Well, there are different forms that companies can have. On the homeowner side specifically, auto insurance is pretty standard. I won't say all the way across the board, but a lot of those products are pretty similar from one carrier to the next. But on the homeowner side, they're able to write in certain coverages, include things that maybe aren't included by other carriers. For those that don't want to shop, I think that there's not as big a difference as they think. There's, some brand awareness. Obviously, State Farm does have market share, but they also, have market share in times of great loss, like hail and fire, and they're not immune to those things. So I think a consumer just needs to be aware of what all their options are.
It's funny. I've heard people say in the past, like, oh, I'm with X carrier and they're terrible at, giving us a new roof when it's hailed out. And then other companies are better at, I don't know what's the distinction there. Like, what makes an insurance company better?
They are rated by AM Best, and that's a good way to tell on some solvency stuff, but they're also rated by various entities just to see how they're doing with claims, satisfaction, consumers, that kind of thing. We try to work with the more reputable carriers. Our three largest are Travelers, Safeco, and Nationwide, and they've done a great job for us over the years. We do have others. Auto Owners is another great partner of ours. We try not to write a lot of business with carriers that don't seem to like to pay their claims or don't pay them timely or efficiently.
I imagine those companies don't stay in business very long anyway, right?
Yeah, they definitely move to the bottom of the totem pole.
What else? What else is interesting that I don't know to ask, but you think is something that's curious for people to know or understand about the business of insurance? Just
know that it's going to be pretty fluid and it's going to change on into the future. I mean, we can't control the wildfires and the hail in our state, and therefore it's going to look a little different moving forward. We're probably all going to have to be a little more flexible in what that coverage looks like. And we may even see, things like a wildfire policy similar to today, like you would see with flood or earthquake. It's a separate policy altogether. We just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and I think we need to be prepared for it and kind of be planning for it as well.
Yeah. So people who, own a house, have a couple of cars, and they want to maybe reach out to your team and get a quote, what does that look like? How can they reach you? Where do they call? Where do they go to?
Our office is here in Arvada, but we're very mobile. I can get all over the Metro Denver area, but our number is 303-431-9351. You can find us at evertreeinsurance.com, and we'd be happy to help anybody that's looking to take a look at their insurance.
And so are you writing insurance policy just in Colorado, or do you can you go everywhere, or how does that, where else can you go?
We're in about 12 states. Evertree as a brand is in all 50 states. It is difficult for us to write in certain states like California. Texas right now is a tough one too because of some of their weather, and Florida obviously as well.
Yeah, Florida's been dealing with just hurricanes, flooding, things like that.
Yeah.
Best golf tip for any golfer?
Just stick with it.
Stay with it.
Yeah. There's going to be bad days and there's going to be good days.
Time on green, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And your favorite place to golf and your dream place to golf?
My favorite place is at Rolling Hills, where I'm a member.
Yep.
And Pebble Beach, I've played once, but that's my dream is to get back out there and play.
And who's the most famous person you ever golfed with?
I didn't golf with him, but I had dinner with Jack Nicklaus at the Ryder Cup in 2021.
I'm sure for you that was a dream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Highlight of my career, for sure.
I'm sure, for sure. You have been a trusted confidant, a friend. I wish you all the best. You've taught me so much about insurance. I can tell you just, from personal experience, Jeremy's insuring rental properties that I own, vehicles. I've got business policies with you, umbrella policies with you, and other things like that. So sometimes people don't know what they don't know until they call you. And I would say if you're in business and you're not exactly sure if your insurance needs are being met, calling somebody like Jeremy is great, because what happens is I call and say, hey, I'm doing this endeavor. And he says, whoa, we should be insuring you this way. And so I've bought these random policies that I didn't even know existed for slips and falls or things like that. I guess all to say, you're the best. It's like a treasure trove of information about insurance every time I come to you. And so I guess just to say to my audience, if you have insurance questions, you should reach out and call, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. But anyway, I appreciate your time and this conversation.
Thanks, Amanda. I appreciate you having me on.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.